Hey everybody, welcome to DadActivated. Today I have a very important guest from Cultivated Change, Alex Corey. Alex Corey, tell us all about yourself. Welcome, and I was so excited to talk to you today. We've talked before, and to continue the conversation, it couldn't have come soon enough, so I'm glad we finally got around to it. Welcome, and tell everybody about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you on my podcast. And um, my origin story is basically a decade old. So
Okay.
college, so I'm 33 now. And when I was in college, I had pretty severe subclinical depression. And that was kind of I'm a health coach now, and I'm a health coach now because I stress on prevention and doing things before you get to that state of desperation so much, because I was in it a
Yeah.
decade ago. And that was my intro to basically like real basic health things like, oh, maybe I should eat something that's not just like pasta from the cafeteria and fried food from, I mean, I was in college, so college diet, but it was middle of winter. I was away from my normal environment. Didn't really, I was super active in high school, but college kind of rips you out of your
Everything.
comfortable normal environment. Right. So I didn't do well. And I was put on like some low grade SSRIs just because I had subclinical depression.
Right.
And within like 2 days, I've never been good at taking things. Within 2 days, I was like, nope, I'm not doing this. So I just started like a rabbit hole of like, okay, how could I end up here? Because I was super healthy in high school. I ran cross country for 8 years, blew my knees out, played
Mhm.
tennis since I was 5. Mom always pulled me hiking, like very active and um, not the best diet, but pretty good. I mean, my mom cooked dinners, so I didn't know the experience of not being well. And then college was just that dramatic shift. Like I was playing video games a ton. So I just wasn't in a good headspace. And then getting myself out of depression, my mom found me some meditation
Mm.
guides from that was before meditation was um, so popular. There were no apps for it. It was basically things still on CDs. So just a little bit of going to the gym, like a little bit of salads, and just a little more whole food instead of the heavily processed food. Real basic, one notch up
Mhm.
so quickly.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, that's weird. Why didn't anyone tell me about that? So that started a rabbit hole of just a deep dive into baseline nutrition. I was in training for information technology at the time
Mhm.
and learned about the food system and all of the current problems with the massive agricultural food system. And I was in a good paying IT career at that point. A couple years passed since the depression and I was a little more balanced and then kept digging and seeing sort of the root cause of
Right.
why that happens so frequently, why so many college kids in the peak of their youth just have horrible, crippling mental illness or the start of chronic disease, all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
I actually left IT, my tech job 2 years in, and went and took a hiatus and learned how to farm because I couldn't unglue myself from trying to want to know how to do something because IT is very specific and I didn't know how to do anything with my hands, didn't feel like I had direct control over my health. And I just wanted to go. Farming is still the thing that I think teaches you the most useful skills because everything around farming is just hyper useful. So you have to learn a little building, growing your own food, you have to learn about water management, like all the natural processes, right?
Resourcefulness and
So
yeah.
yeah, that was my intro. And then I went back to IT because you don't make money farming. But I went to Hawaii a couple times. I learned permaculture, traditional organic farming. I was a big organic guy, so not conventional, no real petrochemicals. But that was my intro to health. And then from there, I get bored very quickly. So, which is why I have so many projects. So I went into personal training after that. Then that spiraled into health coaching, which I'm doing now. And water has been there the entire time. Um, Obviously, agriculture relies on water every day,
Right.
but it's always been direct control of health. Since
Mhm.
that scared me so much. Like I was suicidal in college. Like there were
Yeah.
maybe two nights I vividly remember where it just like popped in. Did not look forward to getting up in the morning. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay,
Yeah. That's a new
not
level.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that in mind, it was just a relentless pursuit of how to never let that happen to my mental state again.
So you
So
really felt it at, right when you started taking the SSIs, and there was something in you that knew something was really wrong, like that. What was that feeling that propelled you forward? It almost sounds like
yeah.
fear, like you knew that something was really out of alignment, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had such a great high school experience. A lot of people have more unfortunate, but I was extremely active, had a great social group,
Mhm.
and you just never had, I'd never glimpsed that level of
Mhm.
um, below the baseline of human
Yeah.
emotion. I had never been in despair or just a strong negative hopelessness.
Mhm.
And that was such a big contrast for me that it was definitely at that time more of a running away from fear, like how do I never experience that again,
Right.
rather than running towards something. But I think running away, if you know what you're running away from, that could be pretty powerful too. It's always you have to get out of the hole
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
and then and then going towards optimal health
You were running towards
was the
self.
secondary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it yo-yos still every day. Like some days are I feel that like baseline of despair creeping back in, just if it's a weird day. And
Yeah.
thankfully I have way more tools now. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's still lingering there for sure.
Yeah. It's it requires constant maintenance, right? Like you can slip back in really quickly with, especially, it sounds like you really approach health in, and it's an overused word, but like a completely holistic way, from what you're eating, what you're growing, the water that feeds
Yeah.
what you're growing, to your workouts and physical, like you're hitting it from all the spectrums.
Yeah. There's a couple that movement will pull me out of most anything. But if I have my two things that'll kill me, like I have a pretty clean diet. That's why I learned how to farm, right? Because I want a complete control out of my food. So I have a pretty clean
Mhm.
diet at this point. And unfortunately, I'm very, very sensitive. And the two things that will make me feel bleh or melancholy, gray, if I
Yeah.
do both caffeine and sugar,
Hmm.
and usually the things that come with them, like sugar is just usually like a baked good. So there's a lot of hydrogenated fats, just heavily processed food. But if I do caffeine and sugar, that is a recipe for my neurotransmitters to just start yo-yoing. Like I will not feel good.
Yeah.
It'll almost be like, well, it'll feel like I'm on drugs, and then the next day it'll feel like I'm on like any type of hangover. So for me, I know what it feels like so intimately to sort of be flipping back down into that gray area, and I really don't like grays. I want it to
Yeah.
either be bad and I can get through it,
Interesting.
or good. I really don't like gray.
Interesting. So
Yeah,
caffeine and sugar
is
are
my downfall.
okay.
Both of those in combo, I can handle either one of them.
Okay.
But if I do both of those in the same day, the next day I'm going to feel fairly useless, unproductive, unmotivated, and basically just trying to get through the day,
Is it
which I
because
don't
of
like.
like an overstimulation from the
Mhm.
kind of the dopamine or the
Yeah.
whatever the caffeine is doing to the
Yeah,
neuros?
there's a serotonin and dopamine imbalance somewhere there. I haven't quite
Yeah.
nailed it down
Yeah.
because I'm trying to just not experience it as
You're
much, but
right.
it almost feels like a lot of people would describe like an MDMA or some
Mm.
heavy drug, a heavy like party
Yeah.
musical experience or psilocybin experience the night
Yeah.
before, and the next day they just feel bottomed out, like all of there's
Ah,
no movement.
yeah.
Kind of feels what I would think that would feel like, where I just don't feel like myself. Yeah, usually I'm fairly optimistic and I can get real cynical real fast.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's amazing that you have, it's that awareness. You know, that awareness comes from, I was talking about this yesterday in one of my posts, like the speak in your process. and if you are, whether you're speaking to yourself or you're speaking externally, work in your process, examining, that process starts with actually just being aware of how you feel. So, I mean, how many people just blast through 5 cups of coffee a day? I'm feeling down, I need more coffee. I'm feeling down, put more sugar in my coffee. And I'm blending the two, and I'm getting farther out of whack. And I'm not paying attention to what my body's telling me, that heartbeat is racing, and all the other side effects of all that. So when you're like listening to your feedback that your body and your mind and your heart are giving you, is meditation a part of your daily thing? How are you checking in with yourself on a regular basis?
Yeah, morning and evening. It's easier for me to do in the morning. Evening, I've never had problem going to sleep, thankfully. So it's always way more important for me to do in the morning, but I do a journaling practice in the evening. And I get pretty immediate feedback from my nervous system, like my heart. My metabolism is so quick, which isn't the best thing. I mean, it's a good thing for most people if they want to do like weight management, but it's kind of annoying. I can get away with basically anything, but my nervous system is so sensitive where I don't need any stimulants. Like I'm pretty ready to go just if I hydrate first thing in the morning.
Right.
So any stimulants on top of that, my nervous system, I can feel rise into sympathetic, and my heart rate will increase, and I'll almost get fidgety, like at 8 in the morning. And I'm like, that's not a good start. So meditation is actually what got me out of the depression initially. It was before anything else really kicked in, it was just being in silence. And starting to watch processes happen in my head. So that's been the staying power through the last decade. And the awareness is pretty supercharged at this point, where I am just so hyper aware of everything going on in my body where it's obnoxious. I'm just very sensitive at this point, because you kind of your bar raises, unfortunately. So I just can't get away with really drinking anymore. Like if I drink, it's like 1 or 2 max. I just don't drink anymore. Because I feel what my nervous system likes to be baseline so intimately, where I like to sort of test the edges of it out, but with movement and with explosive exercise and breath work and things that I can bring myself back from, and that don't have like a forced day recovery time on the other side, like food would.
So how does molecular hydrogen water kind of contribute to in your whole spectrum of how you approach health? What does it do for you? Tell me a little.
Well, so I came to the water whenever Justin Gardner, who's in our water group, I was growing microgreens in Asheville. It was my intro back into farming, since Asheville, North Carolina, which is where I live, is just very expensive to live in. Not as expensive as Hawaii, where you are, but pretty expensive still. So I moved here farming, and I couldn't sustain that financially with my partner at the time. So I started a tiny little microgreen business just because she was in the restaurant industry, and it has such a low barrier to entry cost wise and time wise. That's how I started back into the farming world. And then it got big enough where I needed help. So I found Justin, who has property about 20 minutes north of Asheville, and we started growing together. Microgreens don't need a ton by themselves. It's just soil, seed, light. I mean, it's pretty basic, but he got an ionizer. He didn't ask me about it. He just got one because he's a water nerd. He had been restructuring with magnets and running it through sand filters. He's on well water, so it's not the worst to begin with, but he's always been a water nerd. And he just bought one. And then I was like, what did you get? But we started using it for the microgreens before I ever started drinking it, because it's the perfect agricultural companion, because it has full pH control, and that's basically all you need for agriculture, is just what are you watering with, contaminant free, 6.0. We're using the 2.5 hypochlorous acid for any mold issues, killed it in like 30 seconds. It was ridiculous how well it worked.
Good,
So we
'cause I have a
basically
problem with
just,
mold with my microgreens, so
oh
thank you.
yeah, everyone does. Well, yeah, I have full guides on this, but mostly it's seed density or lack of airflow. But
Okay.
anyway, it is the perfect companion to agriculture. And then I was drinking it as he was explaining what it was, and I started drinking it as we were using it, taking it home. And it took, I'm a very cynical person, and he didn't tell me a ton about it. And I started going through like very interesting energetic shifts. Like my energy levels were changing noticeably just from drinking water before. Like I would still do chocolate or, pre-workouts, something like that. And I didn't need to. The addiction was still there, but like in the morning during my morning routine, just having like 16 ounces of water, not chugging it, but slowly, my metabolism was firing. Pretty
Oh,
interesting. So
wow.
he let me play with it before he started talking to me about it. And then usually someone just has to turn me on to something, and then I'll just go down a rabbit hole myself, which is
Right.
exactly what happened. So I started looking at molecular hydrogen, which is the active component
Yeah.
of our ionized water, or electrolyzed reduced water, which is the technical name. And it pairs with microgreens so well, because the entire thing of microgreens is antioxidants, right? You're getting a plant at its most antioxidant rich stage, because antioxidants are the plant's defense chemical. They're how they protect themselves from pest pressure. So all of the baby broccoli and baby cabbage that we were growing, it was like super high in antioxidants. And the molecular hydrogen is more potent than that. With plants, you have to digest and assimilate, and some people have reactivity to them, like my partner
Mhm.
that I mentioned had Hashimoto's. So she couldn't actually do any raw cruciferous vegetables, especially microgreens, because the antioxidants actually reacted with her poorly. But molecular hydrogen, which is an antioxidant, doesn't have that. So it was really a weird experience where I could stop eating my antioxidants, because
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily, you get pretty tired
Yeah.
of having to worry about, the health world, the alternative health world, which I'm in, is quite overwhelming. A lot of time there's so much information,
Yeah.
so much data. You could always be doing something better. So I actually could stop thinking about that and kind of living in that, um, always having to think about getting my medicine through my food,
Right.
and I could just drink it and not have to think about it. So it just kind of simplified the entire process of health in
Yeah.
general for me on all levels, because it is there's no barrier, there's no habit that has to form, unless you just don't drink water in the first place. But I've always had a healthy water consumption, so it was just a dramatic shift from drinking and spending, like I was buying Gerolsteiner,
Mhm.
and which is a German uh, spring water in
Yeah.
glass, and Mountain Valley, because I've never been a big plastic person, because
Right.
I just don't like plastic, drinking out of plastic. But there was a shift from the amount of water I drank, because it was so easy to drink and it felt so energized, is the
Yeah.
best word, I guess. And thankfully I've never had like massive brain fog issues either, but just the like difference in energy. And I'm pretty aware of my my normal flow throughout the day. Like I usually have a dip around 2 o'clock. Most people
Yep.
do. It's where insulin drops a little bit.
Mhm.
My normal gig is Primal health coach, which is basically just like hormonal awareness to a T. So I'm pretty good with my body, and there's just it leveled the edges.
Yeah.
There was less need. My energy didn't move dramatically one way or another. It was a really good baseline, and way to get back to homeostasis is the best way I can put that.
Yeah. It's really, the water is almost like the starting point of
Yeah.
health, right? Like it's not, and there's no shopping list for the water. Like there's no paleo shopping list that you've got to figure out to go,
True.
I just get up in the morning and I pour a glass and I drink it. And what
Yeah.
I've experienced with like I used to drink, especially when I was drinking alcohol, like my water consumption was minuscule during the day, like just enough, because the tap water, I think it had to do with the tap water and the way that tap water makes you feel. Like if you drink more than a large glass, you feel kind of gross, like bloated. It doesn't like sit well with you. Try drinking a gallon of it, like some people do with the gallon challenge. And then as soon as I started drinking this water, it just felt good. It felt like that's my baseline beverage that I need to be drinking throughout the day, and I can absorb it really well. And like I'm always ready for more of it. I never feel full. So that's great that you
Yeah.
found that. So Primal Health Coaching, tell me a little bit more about, so you've been through this health journey, you've done
Mhm.
all of this years of work for yourself, and you've really dialed everything in so that you're in this homeostasis holistically. Tell me about what you're doing with your clients with the coaching, and how do you help transition them, and how do you usually find them? Like what state are they in when they come to you, and
It's
what's
almost always desperation, unfortunately. It's people who got a interesting diagnosis from their doctor about calcified arteries, or it's not actually, a lot of them are just people around my age, right? Usually your demographic that'll resonate with you is within 10 years or so of you. So it's often business professionals in my age range that know or feel they should do something
Mhm.
differently than they are if they just want to, most of them have poor sleep. Most symptoms of society are about the same. It's just lacking energy, relying on stimulants, um, not sleeping as well as they could, not being able to shut their brain off,
Mhm.
probably want to increase a little muscle mass and lose a little fat. Like most people's concerns are about the same in the same age range, a little more productivity, basically just want to feel more vital. Energy and vitality are the two words that I usually get on a discovery form. They just kind of want to feel a little more aliveness.
Mhm.
And there's just a lot of genetic things that like our genes
Oh,
expect certain things.
right, right.
Yeah. So it's primal is just a prior to civilization, what do your genes expect? How far away from our baseline coding are we? And it's circadian rhythm,
Pretty far.
it's nutrition, it's sleep, it's just a lot of environmental triggers. And it's kind of we try to take it back to baseline. It's a lot more simplistic than a lot of things. I mean, it can get overly complex for sure, but it's just like the movement piece is a little different than the normal fitness world. So there's a lot of like short, acute bursts of high intensity mixed
Okay.
with a lot of long duration, easy. Like
Mhm.
we really try to avoid that gym chronic push it, that
Yeah.
like somewhere between 65 and like 90% where you're kind of just running yourself into the ground. So the model is basically a lot of like lifting 3 times a week, but a lot of low grade, like walking, hiking, a
Yeah.
lot of easy aerobic stuff that
Sunshine.
it, yeah, I mean, walks outside are the best thing. It's just a lot of hormonal rebalancing because most people's cortisol, stress hormones are just
Yeah.
cranking, mine included, if I don't
Yeah.
watch it all day, because we're chronic workaholics in
Yeah.
today's age, most people. Yeah.
Always in front of
It's
the screen.
yeah, it's right. And that's in there too. It's just minimizing blue light, which is why I have the weird glasses on because I have a ring light in front of me.
Yeah.
So I now feel all of these things. I now feel too much EMF. Like it's kind of just getting back into the natural rhythm of things. And once you get the baseline there, it's hard to not feel whenever something's pushing you off.
Yeah.
Like if I don't do anything. It is more animal based, actually, which is why some people have a hard time with it. But it's easy for weight management because you're so satiated all the time. And I used to be vegan and vegetarian. That was part of the health journey. So I was farming vegetarian and I lost so much weight.
Yeah.
Tried burning like 3,000 calories and
Yeah.
literally not being able to put that back in. So I found it before the health coaching. It was what I naturally gravitated towards just to be able to like put on muscle
Yeah.
for my build because I'm so tall and skinny and lanky. But it was the only thing that actually could make it so I wasn't ravenous every 2 hours.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What are so as your clients come in and they're working with you, are they like what are some of the resistance points that you get from them? Is it like lifestyle modification?
Yeah.
You know,
Alcohol is a huge one because I'm sure you can relate to that one.
yeah,
That's a hurdle, and it's usually reduction. And then once they start the accountability of working out, or
yeah,
they get to choose whatever movement they want, but there has to be some muscle centric movement in there. So you have to be taxing yourself enough to rebuild. And usually, if you're drinking the day before, you have
Yeah.
any sort of muscle centric workout, like you're going to feel it. So that's usually enough to get them to just want to feel better about the way they can work out. I don't have to tell them anything.
Yeah.
Just having to do the workout will scream at them. And then the hardest part is usually diet. There's so much emotional childhood comfort around nutrition. And we usually try to soothe ourselves through food, which is why baked goods are so good. It just triggers so many like floods of dopamine and good feelings, where most of those foods are the heavily processed foods that are just creating what Primal is really good at is just low inflammation.
Yeah.
It could just be described as like the anti-inflammatory. Like we mostly just cut out. I mean, Whole30 is pretty close to paleo or Primal. So it's just if you feel that level of inflammation or that level of baseline as your normal, any amount of inflammation, you can usually pinpoint what caused it. So a poor night of sleep or staring at screens too late in the evening. But the baseline for most people, where most people will feel the biggest jump, is just coming off of processed food. That and starting a basic exercise routine and sleep is like now number one up there for me. I don't care how much water you drink or how clean your diet is. Like if I get less than, well, I'm very needy. If I get less than 7 hours, I don't feel good. But most people, if they get less than 6 hours, doesn't matter what else they do. Like you can wiggle your way around getting through the day, but sleep is so important. And most people, just because we're so technological, like LEDs, blanketed in Wi-Fi and non-native EMF, and just everything about the sleep environment is usually just a degree or two off of someone getting like a fantastic night's sleep. Yeah.
Unreal. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Alex, was you have a lot of components to what you're doing and what I see you addressing and helping people with. You've got the health, you've got the agriculture, you've got the physical fitness part of it. Like if you had to describe your mission in a kind of a synopsis sort of way, how would you sum it up so that we could easily digest it?
Increase people's toolkits for sovereignty, resilience, and metabolic health.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I just redid my website, so I had to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because I was trying to figure this out, and I was like, the reason I got the water and the reason that so much ties back into it is because everything ties into it. It's just the core. It's the baseline. People will, if someone doesn't do one of the biohacking things or forgets a supplement or doesn't do their workout as hard as they could, if they just have molecular hydrogen, it's kind of like cheating. It's really annoying because there's so many other things that are also crucial. But if having antioxidants in your water is your baseline, everything else is kind of gravy. And obviously with physical fitness, you still have to put in the work, but just for the power of regeneration, it was the missing link that I didn't have in agriculture. That was, you could stop buying all of our pH buffers, all of our insecticides and pesticides, because you also have 2.5 hypochlorous acid. It was, no one talks about it in health. In my entire curriculum I was an ACE, American Council on Exercise Health coach. I did NASM, personal training, and then Primal. None of them had hydration, and which I didn't think anything about because I wasn't in that world. And now I'm like, no one talks about this. Like it's the core that so few people are aware of, including myself prior to a year ago.
Right.
So that's why we started the Appalachian Water Collective, our local Southeast United States region and Evolutionary, the global partner for it, because water is the foundation and no one talks about it. It's not in the news unless there's an explosion or a massive spill. And then people freak out about one thing, like atrazine made the headlines. That's a herbicide that is in Texas groundwater. It's everywhere, but made the headlines. PFAAs and forever chemicals make the headlines now and again. North Carolina, because DuPont is here specifically making that's a Teflon byproduct. These things that just are massive health issues, but people hear about it for about 2 weeks, then disappears. So water hits everything. It's the fastest way
Yeah.
to regenerate. It's silly. Like it slows the, I just put up a post today, slows the aging process. It prevents like DNA, RNA, oxidative stress, damage to every, if someone had asked me if there was a magic pill, I would say molecular hydrogen's the magic pill. Your body makes it. You just don't make enough of it for as much toxicity that's around us. It's just supercharging all of the repair processes.
Yeah. Filtration just wasn't really an issue. Not it's more than filtration, obviously, but you were describing like why it comes in the news, atrazine, PFAs, and I'm unfortunately experiencing a disaster here on Maui where all of the water and the air is contaminated from these fires, and it flows. It's up here at 3,000 feet right above me, and the water flows down into our aquifers. And people aren't prepared for that. People aren't even really talking about it yet because of other issues, but all of Lahaina has this problem. And this summer, I went back and visited the mainland, and I ended up up around Duluth, Minnesota. And it reminded me of this trip I took a long time ago, maybe 25 years ago, where we went camping up at the source of the Mississippi River, which is this little Itasca park right over by Duluth, just a little bit west of there. And it's a really important place on the continental United States. It's that center line, like the Mississippi River is like the heartbeat, right, of our water source for farming and agriculture all throughout that area, right? And it's a really spiritual place, and you could feel the power coming from there. And then I just was kind of reflecting when I was up there on what that water looks like as it comes out into the Gulf of Mexico, and it's gone through all of the pollution city by city by city, and it accumulates and it changes structure, and then it collects all of the pesticides, the glyphosates and the PFAs, and then Chicago treats all of its city water, dumps it into the Illinois River, and that feeds in there. And imagine what that water's like. And it just really makes you appreciate the ability to have semi-clean water, put it through filtration, and then put it through the electrolysis process. And then you have this superpower, for your baseline homeostasis. And it's crazy to think about like what we need to do to get our water back to its source. And then also what the amount of people that are aware of molecular hydrogen and what it is and how it's so easily available is like, it's just so minuscule. I didn't know until very recently. The one thing I kept saying to Annie at Evolutionaire is like, how did I not know about this? And like, I'm fairly health conscious, lately. And like, I had no concept of it. And how did you find it now? You found it through Justin?
Just because of who I knew. Yep. I didn't find it either. I don't know why the studies don't get shoved in our, I pay attention to the metabolic studies pretty frequently, but there's so much information, and usually more accessible things that are on store shelves have more marketing behind them. So usually like bodybuilders playing around with like creatine and taurine and a lot of amino acids. So it's just whatever marketing. There's just not a lot about water because there's so little money spent on research for it. Unless people are just genuinely curious. Now there's studies picking up because they're finding applications for, like I mentioned, it prevents oxidative damage. It's a neuroprotective agent. Like it's now being studied for cancer, for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, neurodegeneration, basically anything, all chronic diseases, because all chronic diseases are some sort of malformation to DNA or RNA or the base building processes. So it's now being pumped because there is, they do have molecular hydrogen pills, and that was around. And I talked to a lot of fitness people, like owners of gyms, who are interested in the ionizers. And I was like, how did you know about molecular hydrogen? They're like, well, they've had the hydrogen pills. The problem with the hydrogen pills, it just dissolves hydrogen, is people forget to reorder. It's a supplement, right? It's not easy. It's another thing you have to remember. The reason why, even if it's not like the super high concentration, the reason why I like it and the drinking water, because you don't have to remember to do anything. Like health coaches are just habit coaches. That's actually what we are. And you don't have to reform a habit around drinking something. If you can get someone just to change it, and if you can just sneak mega doses of bioavailable antioxidants in there,
Yeah.
weird things start happening. Yeah.
There you go. You're
Yeah.
so much more than a habit coach. Don't sell yourself short.
No, I know, but that's what I realized the core of all health coaches, because there's different flavors, right?
Yeah.
So, like there's different flavors of fitness coaches, but the core that ties everything together is just building new rewiring and building new neural pathways. It's building habits, which is long-term lifestyle change.
That's so interesting. And one of the other things, that the water and the crisis kind of we're
Yeah.
experiencing here, and what you mentioned also on your website, that you experienced was, when a couple of things have been affected here and really disrupted. The water is one, but we're also an 80% economically in Maui and Hawaii in general, relying on tourism and tourism dollars. And those tourism activities are guides and restaurants and tours and luau's and things like that, and all of that is time, location dependent. And and you work in farming, right? But how has this unique business model affected you and maybe opened your eyes in terms of something that is global, is not disruptible under almost any circumstance, right? I shouldn't say that, but like
Right.
it keeps moving, and Annie
It's
has
so diversified. Yeah.
ever, right? Even during this, and she's still making sales. Garrett, another partner of ours, made several sales this week, and it just keeps going, and it's got a permanence to it through its distributed model, right? And tell me a little bit about that and how it relates to you with your farming.
Yeah, this is why we got rid of the microgreens business, actually. So we merged it with another upcoming grower in town, because microgreens is like the definition of being married to your work. They're so intensive, so needy, because there's such a quick turnaround.
Yep.
That both Justin and I were like, this is obnoxious. We can't really travel. And we merged the business into someone else. And then the farming we're doing now is more experimental, food forest, permaculture, a lot more long-term things. But the reason we did that was so we could actually enjoy the benefits of, having freedom trifecta: location freedom, financial freedom, time freedom. So we can, Justin's going to Thailand in November for 6 months, and he can take the business with him because it's global. And then everything I do since we sold the microgreens is with that. Primal, the health coaching, is also online. So if you have the leverage and the ability to be wherever, it's hard to come back from that. It's really hard to then adopt another business model or even have it feel the same if it would tie you down, because I can just go wherever and do the exact same thing. Yeah, everyone needs water, and lifestyle change is location independent. So I really enjoy that freedom, and also having just an unlimited earning potential. Most things are unlimited earning potential if there's no inventory to manage. It's not, you can only handle a certain number of people. Infinitely scalable, which was one of the criteria for, if you're going to put 10 or 20 years into something, that turned into my criteria after we had the experience of being tied down so hard. We just went the other way. We're like, we want complete freedom in whatever we build.
Scalable, distributable,
everything. Yeah.
Independent. And when you invest time in recording a podcast or sharing a message, recording a video, that kind of lives on, and that message continues being delivered even when there's a drought, a fire, or you want to be at the beach and be on vacation. It keeps working for you. That's amazing. What are you looking forward to next? Like what's at the forefront of the next, the rest of this year, for example, with what are you thinking about? What are you focused on? What's some of your goals?
Travel, because the summer here is kind of brutal, and I enjoy fall for basically getting out of the state. And I just rebuilt my health coaching programs and moved my podcast website over. So all the tech stuff is done. So I'm looking forward to, actually, I know you're a big health metric tracker. So that's actually the cooler seasons tend to be higher on the the health consciousness side. People are thinking a little more of it. So
Yeah.
I'm actually looking forward to starting tracking my own, because summer is kind of just like getting through everything. Everything is so crazy. And now because I can slow down, and as I'm rebuilding my things, I get re-inspired in my own health constantly. So I'm looking forward to getting some more data about self-discovery and my own trends, and then passing that along to clients. And
Yeah.
I just love the reason I do a podcast is the continual re-inspiration. Like I just get stories of what worked for people. Again, it feels like cheating. I love inheriting other people's wisdoms, because every body is different, and I love seeing the world through new lenses, through other people's experiences. And then I also get bored with things, so it helps me try new things and just constantly see new novel experiences.
Continual optimization and learning.
Yes, continual optimization.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
always in that space. And
yeah, it never ends.
as guys
Hormozy
who
had a
like to
good
track
quote.
things, I like to
Yeah.
learn, track, digest, move on to the next thing, fix the next thing, right?
You don't win at health, you just keep doing it. So it's a
Right.
continual exploration of how your body works.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I think, do you have any kind of closing wisdom you'd like to share, or inspirational messaging as we wind this conversation down?
Your success in the day starts the night before. And that's one of those cliches that I was like, no, it doesn't. Like I have a fine morning routine, but it really, if I don't get to bed on time, my next day immediately starts off from like 30% instead of maybe 80%. So the key foundation for a lot of people I work with, and myself especially, is to really allow yourself to not work, especially if you're an entrepreneur, late into the night, and to actually relax. I think the message is slow down, which is the core primal message. It really has dramatic effects on my nervous system, and I can feel it so much whenever I can actually be more intentional and just slow down in general instead of crushing everything all the time.
Right. Natural rhythms,
Yeah.
circadian rhythms,
Yeah.
and keeping yourself, keeping your battery charged. We've all been
Yeah.
on
Well regulated. Well put.
yeah. Beautiful. Appreciate your time, sir. It's a huge pleasure getting to know you a little bit more and your process and learning, and keep learning and then keep sharing with us. We will be in tune and listening for your next moves.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
All right. Take care, Alex. Aloha.
Aloha.